Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new Flow album called Therapy at the Club. For anyone unfamiliar with Flow, they are a British girl group, which actually I was shocked to know that they were British, consisting of 3 members that do this kind of pop R&B sound. They had an album that they released in 2024 called Access All Areas that I thought was very, very solid, and now this is their second album. Yeah, so I was very impressed with their 2024 album. They had a lot of catchy, very poppy, old school, almost 2000s R&B hits. Classic tracks that, honestly, I feel like was missing at that time and still is kind of missing from modern music. And I was kind of wondering what direction Flow would take with their second album. And I feel like this album is kind of a growth stage from Access All Areas while also kind of lacking that big jump from that first album that I thought they really could in energy. Kind of breaking down every track from 1 to 16. I believe there's 16 songs on this album, and honestly, I feel like 16 is a little too much. It comes in at 46 minutes, which is a very, very respectable timing, but I feel like the amount of songs, and some of the songs feel like they were not worked on enough, and they felt a little bit filler-like. So I feel like if you cut down the songs a little bit and perfected the songs that they did have on this album, it could have made it a little more pleasant. But yeah, one of my critiques with this album is not exactly its runtime, but how many songs they are, and it almost feels a little chaotic at points. You start off the album with Side Effects, which has a very, very interesting intro. It's a spoken word intro for part of it going into the song, which was very interesting. I thought we would be getting more of a concept album considering what the intro sounded like, but this is one of the songs where I am just okay with it. I wasn't a huge fan of the hook in this one. I feel like the rhyme timing, the tone, the overall tone in the hook felt a little bit off in how they were singing. It didn't exactly feel the most normal. And overall, I feel like their vocals kind of clashed on this one. It kind of sounded chaotic at times. So I'm not a huge fan of this opening track, but it does get better, the album. Track number 2 kind of suffers the exact same thing on Small Doses, where I don't think the hook is memorable enough to stand out, and it also feels like their vocals are clashing a little bit. So, you know, the first 2 tracks of this album, I was starting to get a little wary of where we were actually headed. But the singles are very, very good, I will add. So that did help me kind of be like, oh yeah, the singles are good. There's got to be some good stuff. And trust me, there was. The third song, Cry Ugly, is kind of where this album really, really gets started for me. This is where their vocals are at the full climax. They are very satisfying to hear, and this is Flow at their best. Something about those first 2 tracks I didn't think worked with their vocals, but when they are belting, they are doing high notes and stuff like that, and very melodic choruses. I feel like that is where they succeed, and Cry Ugly is one of those songs that I thought was a gorgeous track, and a standout especially for their vocals. Now, my favorite single going into this album, track 4, Leak It, is kind of similar to the stuff that they did do on Access All Areas, with this very dancey, cunty runway R&B, with a touch of like old school 2000s stuff, and that mix really, really works for them. Absolutely my favorite single and song off of this album, in my opinion. This just has everything. This has done pretty well. It's got 40 million streams on Spotify, and I can understand why. I wish they kind of would have went more into this direction with this album. I cannot hype it up enough. Just an iconic hook. It sounds familiar to some Tate McRae songs that I noticed people have been like saying that it sounds kind of similar to Tate McRae. In a way, but it's obviously different. It's not like they copied her, but it does feel very Tate McRae coded, which I love. Track 5, Touche, is another very, very solid track. But yeah, the grooviness and it was just very, very nasty. That instrumental really did a lot of the work, but not all of the work. I thought it was a very well-rounded track. And Touche, very, very solid track. We're on a roll now. Track 6, I Can't Be High Around You Anymore. Holy shit, this song is good. Again, kind of similar to Touche, a beat is super, super killer. One of the things I love about Flow that they did on their first album is that their beats have this dancey flair. They have a uniqueness to them that not a lot of R&B can say. I feel like that's one of the things with R&B that sometimes takes me out, is that the beats and the instrumentals are just not engaging enough. And Flow is the exact opposite of that. And whenever they are doing this stuff, that is where I love them at their absolute most. So it's a groovy, funky beat on this track, mixed with an absolute stunning and gorgeous chorus. The drums are punchy, which absolutely love. And this is where I like Flow. Sometimes they do more of this talk style in their hooks, but whenever they do their sung choruses that are very melodic and quiet compared to the rest of the track almost, I feel like that's when they're at their best. So I have this marked as a top 3 song, in my opinion. Track 6, I Can't Be High Around You Anymore. Wow. Track 7, Sober, I'm not the biggest fan of, I found. It was the most stripped back song on the album, but I almost didn't think it worked. It's not because I am not a fan of stripped back songs. I just didn't think for this exact song it worked. I wasn't a fan of the sound of the guitar to begin with, so maybe that is why. As well, kind of like the first 2 tracks, it feels like the vocals clash. There are moments where, and I don't know exactly why, but I just find the vocals really, really grating, like they're singing over top of one another, and it can just be all very, very chaotic. So there are moments in this album where it happens, but when their vocals are good together, they are good, and they create such a great environment for this album. So Sober, probably one of my least favorite tracks on the album. Therapy at the Club, track 8, was also released as a single, and I think it's okay. It's probably my least favorite of the singles that they pre-released for this upcoming album. It's very soothing. It's got this like very doo-wop style that I thought was okay. Yeah, it's soothing. It has a very familiar melody that I could not exactly pinpoint, but I'm like, I swear I've heard that melody before. The post-chorus was a standout for me, but I didn't think the hook actually did enough. I thought it was just okay. Following up track 8, Therapy at the Club, with another single that just came out about a week prior for this album, track 9, in Remedied, and this is where their stuff, like Leak It, kind of comes in the fray again, and they just do this so well. It is absolutely a killer track that has energy. It is punchy. It is a little too short. I will agree with that. And this is the first time on the album where I heard their British accent. I didn't realize they were British. I thought they were an American girl group. And then whenever they started singing in a British accent, I'm like, wait, they're a British girl group. That's one of the very first times that I noticed it. And I thought that was a fun thing to add on there. Had this garagey vibe too. I like the inclusion of that with the R&B dance vibe that they were doing. Remedy is also a absolute standout for me. It's probably a top 3 song on this album for me as well. Now, my least favorite track on this album that I think is a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe that I think even Flow fans will agree with, is Pose featuring Juicy J at track number 10. This song samples Pump Up the Jam. It like interpolates, so the melody is the exact same as Pump Up the Jam. The chorus in this just doesn't have any of the things that Pump Up the Jam has going for it. This is just a what? Like, I was shaking my head when I was hearing this song. I was like, they seriously did not do this. It's like Pump Up the Jam, but they just killed it. They killed the jam almost. Juicy J provides nothing to this track. You know that sound on TikTok, the fa TikTok audio or whatever? They put that in the track. Just so many random stuff happening in this song. Easily my least favorite, and might be a contender for one of the worst songs I've heard all year. Please take that out of the album. But we kind of get on a roll with it with track 11 in Call Me. I thought this was a fun track that I think if I did listen enough times, I would think it's annoying. It's just this, like, I love the verse style. It is very, very, like, bratty and sassy almost. And then the chorus, which I enjoy, but I feel like if I heard too many times, I'll be like, ugh, not this again. But it's their style in the chorus at points. It's like, call me, call me, call me. And, like, I was kind of vibing, but at some points I was like, okay, maybe I actually don't like this. So it's definitely going to be a hit or miss song for most people. But I thought it was a punchy song. I love the instrumental there. And the verses were probably the standout in this one. But a very solid kind of back on track song after the nightmare that was Pose. Another one of my favorites on this album is Sex and Peace, featuring KWN on track 12. This is where they bring back their sung choruses. It just feels so smooth and sexy, this one. If there was any song on this album that has sex to, Sex and Peace is the one. I really loved it for that reason. Just an amazing R&B song with a gorgeous chorus. Track 13, Floating, I thought was just okay. I thought there could have been actually more beef in the hook. The vocals were a standout on this one. It definitely did feel like I was floating, but I was also hoping for a little bit more, kind of maybe this more cinematic vibe, ethereal vibe to really hammer down the feeling that I was floating, and I wasn't necessarily getting that. The vocals are undeniable in this one, I will admit. But besides that, I think it's just an okay track. Another potential favorite track on this album comes in at track 14, which is Miss You, Missing Me. Wow, what an earworm. What an R&B classic earworm. I'm thinking of this song in my head right now, and it's like, oh, I really want to listen to that. Out of all the new songs I've heard, that one is the one where I'm like, ooh, I really want to listen to that. Because it's something fresh. It's something that, I don't know, this is the R&B stuff that they do excel at most, and I feel like we haven't been getting a lot of that good R&B recently, that I think this just ticks all the boxes for me. Especially the outro of this track, it's just the vocals elevated, a huge climax at the end, and the length is also really solid. The length for most of these songs are quite short, which is why, there's so many tracks and the runtime is long, is because they're able to do this. But I feel like this one is a perfect length. It is a satisfying track from start to finish. Marks one of my favorite tracks on the album for sure. This is the one that I think you guys should check out. 15, another classic single that I reacted to on this channel actually that I really, really enjoy is Don't Break Her Heart. This one is also kind of similar in vein to Miss You, Missing Me with this very, very soothing R&B sound. It is kind of cute. And the hook, it's like, don't break her heart. I will get you. I will haunt you if you break my friend's heart. You know what I mean? Like really trying to hammer down that like, if you do anything and fuck with her, I have got this girl's back. And I find that so cute. A very interesting idea for a song, but it's not one that is common, and I appreciate that. Really, really cute. Probably not meant for me, to be honest. I feel like it's more like a girl's anthem, but you know what? I'm all for it. The last track, Hater Booth at 16, brings back kind of what Flo has been known for doing their best in their whole career. Very energetic and bouncy. I didn't think the hook was anything too remarkable, but I did enjoy the instrumental of this one. This one almost had a rock and dance feel. It was a mix of a bunch of different genres. There was a nice guitar in there that I thought brought a rock vibe to it. Really interesting twist genre-wise for this one. I thought it was a solid closer, kind of bringing back the energy for a moment. And then that marks the end of the album. So kind of going through track 1 to 16, it really does go back and forth. Sometimes I'm like, this one's an okay one. This one isn't great. This one's great. So yeah, my criticisms still ring true that I think the runtime or the amount of tracks on this album could have been cut down a lot. There is a lot of weaker tracks on this album. I think there's at least 5 tracks that I would have cut to make this a solid 10 or 11 track album, really perfect some of the even better tracks on this album. I just think some of the songs mesh together and end up sounding similar. When a hook is memorable, the song is memorable, and a lot of the hooks I find do lack. And as well, their vocals sometimes doesn't mesh the greatest. I don't know why that happens, but I noticed in a handful of tracks. But overall, I think cut it down to a 10 or 11 track album. This is a very good album. So right now, as it stands, I'm handpicking my favorite songs and going through this. I'll say, you know, Cry Ugly is great. Leak It is great. Touche was solid. I Can't Be High Around You Anymore is really solid. One of my favorites on the album. Remedied, oh, banger. Sex and Peace is very sexy and just very calming. Miss You Missing Me is top 3 on the album. Don't Break Her Heart as well as a great single. So there's some good stuff in here, but it really is, you know, hit or miss. That's probably what this album can be defined as, and I wish it was a little more refined. Coming from a very, very solid debut album in Access All Areas. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I did mention, because there's probably going to be a lot of tracks from this album that I am still listening to a month from now, and like, you know, at the end of the year. There's some great tracks in here, but it's just to pick those out of the weaker tracks. It's like, this is kind of an exhausting listen, and I don't think it's necessarily that far, but I know some people will feel that way. So, yeah, my thoughts, I would say it is a 6.5 out of 10 if I were to rank it. Solid, but nothing more than solid. I think the whole body of work, album experience, does take this down, because the highs are high, but the lows are quite low, if I had to say it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this review. What are your favorite songs from this album? Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys in the next one.